Hey everyone, and welcome to another Yogi Misfit Sessions. My name is Danny Pomploon, and I'm your host. Today I'm coming at you with session number 65, and today's show was really fun to record. I've got Rocky Heron on the show, and he's not only one of my really good friends, but also a teacher of mine and a mentor of mine and someone that I look up to. And if you can't tell from the show, pretty much anytime Rocky and I hang out, it's always a bit. So we try to push the envelope with one another. We're always trying to be funny and joking, and we definitely had a really good time recording this show. We talk a lot about what yoga movement means to him right now. I tell him that he's doing yoga wrong. He talks about how he looks at biomechanics and how he looks at the body, and it's been really cool to, I've seen it firsthand, one, but also two, just the way that he's begun to explore it. If you haven't seen any of his stuff before, you can find him on both Yoga Glow and Yoga International, and he does a ton of teacher trainings, and he's just all around really well-rounded and awesome, solid teacher. I'm super excited to be having him on the show today. And Rocky, if you're listening, I just think the absolute world of you. The show, of course, would not be possible without your guys' love and support. So if you could please head over to iTunes and leave us a review, it really does make that much of an impact. It lets your friends know about the show. It lets your friends' friends know about the show. It lets your friends' know about the show. And it just takes a couple quick minutes. So if you could please head to iTunes and leave us a review, that would be awesome. And guys, make sure you check out Om Apparel. They're a men's movement-based apparel company, and they really got us covered from everything, including like yoga pants and just trousers, shorts, tops, vest, hoodies, backpacks. They really got everything just built for us. I've got a couple things that I love on there. One of them is specifically the Dharma pants. I wear them like at home. I wear them on the mat. I wear them on the go. I wear them at the airport. I wear them everywhere because they're the most comfortable pants I've ever worn. The other thing I really like about this brand is a lot of their clothes are all eco-friendly, and I'm totally down with that. So if you want to go check them out, check them out. And if you use the code DANNI15, that's DANNI 15, you'll get 15% off on your entire order. So go check out Om Apparel. Without further ado, here comes session number 65. Rocky, you're doing yoga wrong.
Have I this whole time?
This whole time. I don't know. I'm so sorry to break it to you, but you're doing yoga wrong.
I've been spreading my fingers. Have I been supposed to keep it? Are they supposed to stay together?
That's actually not how you do yoga.
Damn it. Can I do a do-over? Take it from the top?
Yeah, you have to go back like way back.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just... Okay, I'm there.
Okay.
I'm starting yoga. I'm walking into my first class. I'm ready to do it right this time.
Nope. You already did it wrong.
Damn it. No, was I supposed to? I wasn't supposed to walk into class.
Right. You were supposed to levitate into class.
Shoot. Well, take 3 or no? Probably it's a 2-strike.
It's done.
Can we do this for 30 minutes?
I always have to remind myself when I have certain people on the show like you, like, okay, you're not just gabbing with your girlfriends, but you got to go somewhere with this.
This is the Girlfriend Gab podcast with Danny Pomploon, right?
Welcome to Girlfriend Gab with Rocky and Danny.
Yoga talk.
Yeah. Para hastasa. Paras or hastas? Talk amongst yourselves.
Discuss. Paras or hastas?
Discuss. And why?
Erdvas or adas? Discuss. Oh, gosh.
So that's the end of our show today, guys.
Yeah. Time flies. Danny, you're doing podcasts wrong.
Trigger.
I've been meaning to talk to you about this for quite a while, but
here we are. So,
hi guys,
let's pull it together. For those of you that are just tuning in, this is a Rocky Heron on the show. He's not only one of my good buddies, but also he was a mentor, and he is a part of the Yoga Mazé team, and you're just you're Rocky Heron in yourself. You've created all this really cool. I'm just blown away by how much stuff that I actually learned from you, not only working on you with you hand in hand, but also at the last year of my life, I spent, a decent amount of time with you in LA, just learning movement. And you really, for me, you broke the boundaries as to what I thought yoga was, like I thought yoga was these movements done in a certain way, and it was very linear. And you really got me to step outside of my box. You really got me to think of like joints in a different way. And like, I just texted you the other day about weight bearing load and how I was like blown away by that book, and you're like, yeah, duh. How and why did you get so nerdy?
Well, first of all, thank you. That's all very, wonderful to hear. And I think it's hard to answer that question. I think it's just been a natural evolution for me. I've been teaching for the last 13 years, and
you started, and I'm going to interrupt. You started teaching when you were like 18 or 19?
I started practicing when I was 18, and I did my first teacher training when I was 20. So you can do the math. I've been teaching for 13 years.
Weird, because you're only 26.
Oh shoot, my math is wrong. Yeah. Can we start over? Just kidding. I need to make some edits in the post production.
Right.
But yeah, I think one of the things that I love about yoga is there's so many different areas to study, and I'm kind of a restless person by nature, and my interests tend to bop around and change depending on the season and depending on where I'm at in my life. And I think if I was still teaching in the way that I, used to teach, I think it's probably true for most teachers, I would have grown stagnant and kind of plateaued quite a while ago. So I think, I've been fortunate to come across information and also to have my own kind of inner hunger motivating me to learn more, so that it feels like what I'm teaching now is something new. Although it's what I was always teaching, I just have greater language and context around what it is we're actually asking our students to do when we teach them yoga technology. And I think it's really the only way that I've been able to stay engaged and curious and motivated to continue on this path, is to keep learning more. And that's what I'm excited about sharing with my students, and kind of watching them, watching those light bulbs go off for them, where they feel likewise empowered to make their own innovative choices as teachers that are informed not just by like creativity, but also logic and science and what it is that we know now about human movement.
One of the biggest takeaways that I got from you, and I think I've shared this with you before, is like, why am I teaching the thing that I'm teaching in the way that I'm teaching it? Like, why am I teaching Warrior 2? And it's to
why are you teaching Warrior 2, Danni?
I don't know. Everyone else is doing it, so I saw it done in a video. So
groundbreaking.
Yeah, Warrior 2 and yoga, groundbreaking. No, but like really getting me to really inquire deeper, like to like critical thinking. That's I don't know why it's so hard for me to say that, but to really get me to think like, okay, am I teaching Warrior 2 to get people just into Warrior 2, or is there a lesson in the hamstring in Warrior 2? Or is there a lesson in the footing of Warrior 2? Or is there a lesson in one of the simple muscle actions in Warrior 2 that's going to foreshadow something else or get me ready for something else? Or that you want to just strengthen something because in my day-to-day life, that I'm a runner and that's eventually going to help my running out. Or, when I'm 50 and I want my arms to be, or 60 or 70 or 80 or whatever it is, and I want my arms to be still moving, am I strengthening to reach later on? And like, I never, ever thought about why I teach the movements in that capacity. I always, I'm a pinnacle pose teacher or whatever, a peak pose teacher is what they call it for the most of it. And I knew that I was getting rid of the body to do the thing, but then I didn't think beyond that thing until really this last year. And it's funny because, I used to be very intricate in the way that I taught flows. And now they've gotten not only simpler, but there's more teaching in the individual poses. It's been really cool to also, not only see that part, but like, I mean, I want to talk to you about your skills and drill stuff, because that stuff is just mind blowing. Like how, obviously you just said because you started to inquire a lot more about what you were teaching, and that's been your mind frame. But like, how did you then decide to turn it into this thing that you created? You created this skills and drill thing so beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, to go back to what you were saying before, I do think that there is, for someone that's coming to a yoga class to learn yoga, there is I guess, a responsibility of the yoga teacher to give them a basic framework of, what is yoga? How do I embody and inhabit these postures? What are the poses? What are the names of the poses? Like, there's a kind of a basic framework of understanding and language, both kind of physically and mentally, that needs to be established before we can start to play with all those variables.
Sure.
The way we talk about it a lot at Mazé Method is like, you need to learn technique and theory. Like, you need to learn how to play scales before you start to improvise and play jazz. And,
Right.
Whether you understand the larger context behind the theory, and you understand it's like going to school and learning math. Like, you may, in high school, I didn't necessarily understand that math was like the language of the universe to really brought it alive. It was academics. It was something that I needed to learn to progress to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same way, like, whether or not you understand the larger context of something like Virabhadrasana 2, and how it applies to the movements that you're going to perform off your mat, or how it's this symphony of different joint positions and muscle contractions and load profile in your body, like, whether or not that's something that you are looking at, learning the skill is still going to be useful to set you up for success in your yoga practice. So I do think there's kind of the martial art of yoga of like, let's learn these postures and kind of increase our repertoire of pose knowledge. But at a certain point, I think it becomes important to remember that, mentally, we might be organizing poses in a certain framework, or identifying things as yoga asana versus, other different types of movement, dance, Pilates, whatever it is. But the more that I've learned over the years about biomechanics, which really is a study of how our cells interpret and translate force, our cells don't know the difference. Our bodies don't know the difference between what we're doing on a yoga mat versus what we're doing every other, in every other area of our life. Our cells are just responding to the forces that are present. So we start to look at, the yoga poses through the lens of like what our cells are interpreting, and then, zoom in or zoom out to a potential goal of the yoga practices, which is to become more, at least for me, more embodied, not less embodied, but more embodied and aware at the level of my cells. Then, the framework opens up in a large way, where you realize the poses themselves aren't magic. It's the opportunity that the poses provide for us to dive deeper into ourselves. That is where I think the real practice occurs. So to segue into your next question, skills and drills for me is just a way of saying, the yoga practice is very diverse in terms of the movements that it introduces and that it provides. But there are some areas where it's lacking. And, if the poses kind of represent these doorways that we can walk through and this whole kind of universe, say Warrior 2 asks for our legs to move into abduction. So we walk through the door of Warrior 2, and there's a whole world of different, let's say, abduction drills to strengthen and create greater aptitude around within that range of motion, that we might kind of all zip file up into the file Warrior 2. But once you're through that door, there's so much more that you can do there. All of it will contribute to and enhance your practice of Warrior 2, but the conversation doesn't end there. So skills and drills is a way for me to say, like, let's call the skill Warrior 2, and let's call the drill anything that kind of contributes to Warrior 2. But really I'm a bit more interested in the drills often than I am in the skills, because the skill kind of just gives you a starting point or a reference point to explore deeper.
I also feel like the skill is it's like a party trick. It's just one thing that you learn to do the one thing, rather than the drill. You can find that activation in many other things.
Yeah. I mean, and it's still, a skill is a skill, whether it looks fancy, whether it's, in that it does require, the coordination of many different parts. It's kind of like playing jazz. Like the skills might be understanding music theory and where to place your hands, and knowing how to understanding how the chords and scales all fit together. And then the party trick or the entertainment is playing jazz. But that still is a useful skill. Being able to combine the parts and synthesize the individual parts into the whole is not just a trick or a skill, but it's useful. It's life. I mean, life is made up of many individual moments or drills or opportunities to refine our attention, but how we kind of understand or recognize the way it all kind of contributes into the sum total of things is also useful. So I think there's room for both.
How have you seen your own practice grow? One, because of this stuff, but also your students.
Well, in terms of my own practice, I think my practice now looks very different than it used to look. I mean, I initially started out as a vinyasa teacher and started out practicing power yoga. So that was kind of my only reference point for what a yoga practice could look like. And I think that training was really useful for me in that it taught me sort of how to access flow state through parasympathetic breathing or ujjayi, breath-based movement. It taught me a fluidity and a grace in the way that I did move and synthesized all those pieces together. I mean, vinyasa really is a skill in and of its own. And it taught me how to kind of increase and enhance my neuromuscular awareness so that I could place my attention in my body and activate certain things and feel the way that I was relating to the earth and pressing into the ground and moving through space. So like all of that wasn't training that I had before. It enhanced my proprioceptive skills. But I think I've taken all those skills out of the vinyasa practice, and now I incorporate them into a lot of different areas of movement. I go to the gym sometimes. I do a lot of body weight training at home. I might just really dive into a particular body region and work on cultivating greater aptitude and greater awareness there. And to me, all that feels like yoga still because of the initial training that I had around the vinyasa practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you ever get any like kickback from people like, oh, it's not yoga. That's not yoga. I always hear like a lot of those stuff. Some of the stuff that I do with like blankets and whatnot, people are like, that's not yoga. I'm like, what? Okay. What is yoga?
Yeah. I mean, sure. I remember I was teaching a class not too long ago, and I'm also I love to work with the myofascial release tools. I work with Rad Roller quite a bit, and I had a class where I had basically all the props were out, and it was a blanket, 2 blocks of strap.
So people don't know when Rocky says props, he means like you've got a broomstick.
Oh yeah, it's everything.
80 blankets, 2 folding chairs, a kitchen table, a cat, just for fun.
Yeah, just for fun, like a cereal bowl, like a mirror, hairbrush.
Totally. And a nail.
Yeah, a bag of loose change, like whatever we can find. And an amethyst.
Because you want to keep your chakras clear.
Please. Yeah, because all those props could really muddy things up. No, but someone came in the room and was like, we had like also all the rad equipment out. And she's like, "Is this a regular yoga class?" And I was like, "Welcome to class." Like, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know because it like if you are someone that has a background in Iyengar yoga, for example, and you walk into a room and there's a whole bunch of props. That might feel like kind of a regular yoga class, and that like Iyengar yoga is it's common to use lots of props to amend the poses. If you're someone that has an Ashtanga practice and you come into the room and there's all the things lying out, it's going to feel like probably not regular yoga. So whatever is quote unquote, like the joke that I make is like, now we're going to do regular yoga, now we're going to do irregular yoga, but that's all relative to what your starting point is. So for me, like I said, my first exposure to yoga was the vinyasa practice, and I didn't have a larger framework to understand kind of where that fit in the different styles of practice or the lineage of yoga. And so when I took my first class with a teacher that was more alignment based, and there wasn't music playing and there wasn't sun salutations happening, and it was, come over and come watch me demonstrate Warrior 2, I was like, this isn't yoga because it was so different than what I was accustomed to. But, ultimately that helped me expand my framework for what yoga was. And that framework has continued to expand to the point that, I'm aware that what I teach for sure in my mind is yoga, as I define it. But I know that for other people, it may or may not be. So I always just ask, like, when people come to my class, like, come with an open mind and permission to get a little weird.
Yeah.
But it's not just being weird or irregular for the sake of it. It really, everything that I strive to teach is to both benefit your yoga practice, and also to complement your yoga practice, so that you are able to be a well versed and well rounded in your movements, and not grow tired or strained from kind of doing the same thing in the same way every day. A lot of times we exchange, like the practices of yoga become so familiar that it really becomes just sort of maintenance for the sake of, maintaining the practice as it is, instead of kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit and learning new skills.
That's fine. I was going to ask you, like, how do you push people's boundaries? Like when they, let's, like, I mean, I obviously I know how you did it for me when I was in your training, which is awesome. But how do you then do the same for like other students? I so many questions. Well,
how do I ask you actually? How did I push your boundaries? Because
where do I? Oh, God.
Because I don't walk into a room thinking, how can I push people's boundaries? Like, it's never my intention to do things that are, I'm never trying to like create a really hard class or push people outside of their comfort zone. Like, that's not my objective. But I know that, based on who the individual is, that very well may happen. And then I have to be aware of that.
I think the biggest thing is really, it's going back to what I said earlier. The way that you really pushed my boundaries is you made me think. You made me critically think about the things that I was doing, and you made me question why I was doing the things that I was doing. And not that I hadn't done that before, like when I put together a yoga class or whatever, but like you made it go further for me. Like you made me think about the thing, which I'd done. And then you made me think about that thing even further. And then you made me even explore the different options in that thought, if that makes any sense. I know this sounds kind of confusing, but you made me think about, like, I know why I was teaching, just Warrior 2 to Reverse Warrior, right? Like, I thought about that, like, okay, that goes together. Cool. Like, actions and whatever. And then you made me think about, okay, but why that Warrior 2 in that specific way? And then in that specific way, why are you getting that specific? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You made me open up the zip file.
Yeah.
You made me pull it out and then pull out the other file and then really start to, and then you can go down that rabbit hole as far as you want, but I'd never really gone that far before. And I'd never actually been asked to go that far before. No one had ever pushed me to go that far before.
Sure.
And do you remember the discussion that we had at the end of training where we're like, what is the training and what is this method? And for me, it was like how to become a critical thinker in what I teach. And that in itself opened up so many doors. And really, I mean, it's transformed not only the way I teach public classes, but it's transformed the way that I teach people how to teach yoga. It's transformed the way that I teach my privates, the way that I inform my corporates. Like, all the information that I had stored and the way that I organized it is now completely different because of that critical thinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Well,
I think that.
Sorry, go ahead. No. I think there's a lot of really reductive questions that are brought to the table often in the name of yoga. Like, what's the best way to do this pose, or what's the right way, or what's the unsafe or the safe way of doing this thing or that thing. And I think it's important to be responsible and keep our students safe and do things in the way that's the most sustainable. But I think those questions sort of imply that if I find the right way to do it and I do it that way forever, then the benefits will continue to be unlocked and unlocked and unleashed for me, where I'm of the belief that if you only ever do something in one way, that way will inevitably become like not necessarily the wrong way, but these kind of repetitive stress injuries or different issues that people acquire with poses is, I think, from trying to figure out the way of doing it, where I'm more interested in asking the question, well, what happens if we do it this way? What happens if we do it this way? What happens if we do it this way? And if we can make each of those ways that we're doing it a conscious choice that we can support and sustain, then we're not limited by just doing things in one way. We have the freedom of increased choice of how we move, and how we explore. So what I hear you saying is that what I encouraged throughout the training is to continue to inquire as to what it is you're actually doing and why you're doing it that way, not for the purpose of figuring out if it's the right way, but to understand what it is that's actually happening when I choose this option. Which to me is kind of a never-ending question, because there's not a neat and tidy answer. I mean, depends if we're talking about joints, if we're talking about muscles, if we're talking about what's actually happening in our body. That's, we can kind of dive down that rabbit hole. But it's I'm something that's occurred to me kind of recently is, like, not to go down a completely new route, but I'm a mixed race person. My mom's white, my dad's black. And my whole life, I've had some variation of the question, like, do you feel more white or do you feel more black? and the answer, of course, is like neither. I don't feel white or I don't feel black. I'm both. But then depending on where I am and who I'm with, sometimes I might feel more, white. Sometimes I might feel more black, depending on the context. Like when I'm with you, Danni, I feel very, very black because by comparison,
right. That totally makes sense.
So I think like built into my DNA and all of ours to a certain extent, but built into my DNA and the way that I see the world, it always feels a little bit, it always feels more genuine and authentic to recognize that everything is kind of both. Everything, paradox is everywhere. And there isn't the one right way to do anything, but there's kind of the never-ending spiral of questions that we can ask that can further lead to more nuanced understanding of who we are, what we're doing, and why. So
you guys, I mean, what that training did for me, like,
that all makes sense.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. You feel blacker when you're around me. That's it.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
Can that be the title of the podcast? You're doing yoga wrong and Rocky's black compared to.
Oh God. So good. And then the follow-up episode is Rocky pushing Danny's boundaries.
Yeah.
It's an hour of me crying.
Yeah.
Really just like destroying it for me.
Yeah. Ugly crying.
Yeah. The one thing that you really, I've never really known that I have this own style of yoga that I teach, I guess, like I didn't really realize I had my own thing or my own signature, whatever it is that you call it, and really you helped me discover that I have my own thing, and that the way that I teach and the way that I systemize or put things into systems in my classes and the way that I sequence or whatever is like, it's like this vinyasa rebel. I do the vinyasa thing, but then I just break stuff down when I feel it's appropriate in a certain way. And it's actually really, really cool to now feel empowered to know that I have that, to know that I did, what you did? I got it.
What did I do?
You gave me the language to put it together. Does that make sense? Like I didn't know what I was doing before until you helped me inquire, right? You helped me go deeper into why I was doing those things. And then that in itself revealed like, oh, by the way, this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
I was making a decision beforehand, uninformed, knowing that some system had been, the system had a name, right? Or the thing that, the actions and stuff had names and stuff. And when I put it together, I discovered, oh, wow, I'm doing my own thing.
Cool. Yeah. Well, shout out to Noah Mazé, who's been a friend and mentor to me for some time and who I'm now fortunate to call a colleague of mine when we teach these trainings together. But we're both Virgos, and I think like it's really stimulating and oddly soothing for us to be able to create greater systems of organization around what we're doing as teachers. And it's not uncommon that we get folks that come to our training that sort of have their, and this isn't necessarily what I hear you saying, but they sort of have their shtick or their thing as a teacher, where it's like instead of being able to identify what it is you do in your class, it might just be, well, this is the Danny Pomplin experience. and it usually has, there's, whatever the features of that class is. And a lot of times, I know for me, the kind of Rocky Heron experience, for some time, it wasn't a matter of me making conscious choices to do this and not that. It was just sort of the result of what I had kind of sort of been gradually doing and building over the course of several years in the early years of my teaching. Where then, you come to teacher training and you say like, well, this is what my class is. This is how I teach. This is how I teach this pose. This is how I sequence. And we say, okay, well, why do you do it that way? And let's, as an exercise, let's try doing it the opposite way. And it can be like, wait a second, but that's not how I do it. We say, well, the way you're doing it is great. It's working apparently, but let's now try it this way. And so, we're inclined to say like, if you're going to pay all this money to come to a teacher training, and then when you're just going to, we're just going to encourage you to keep doing things the way you're doing things, then what's the point? Let's assume that you're already really good at doing that. And let's ask you to, I used to make fun of or joke because our teacher training used to be called, teach outside the box. And we facilitated that by sort of asking you to teach within very specific boxes. If we're in Vinyasa module, it's like, let's see if you can teach everything breath based. Not to say that's how you're supposed to teach, but as a drill. If we're not in Vinyasa module, more in like, say, quote unquote, alignment based teaching, can you teach a class with no sun salutations?
Right.
And
that was so hard for me, by the way. Remember, I was like, I had to have a talk with you on the side. I was like, I hate this. I'm not doing that. I picked the wrong training. Is not for me.
Yeah. Like if I can't face my dog and chaturanga, it's like, but the messaging there is not that that's better or worse, but we want to sharpen all these skills so that you can look at all the by the end of a training, you can sit back and say, wow, I have all these different skills now, these different tools in my toolkit. Now I can isolate over here, like what the Danny Pomplin experience used to be no longer is my whole universe. It's these choices over here packaged together, and I can push that button and offer that, or I can also go over here now and push a different button and offer that. So, I hope that makes sense. I'm a visual person, so I'm looking at a switchboard of buttons with all these different styles of classes.
Right.
But then what the through line is, at least for me, like my teaching style has changed so much over the years. But even when my students come and take my class who used to take my class years ago, they say like it still feels like your class because it's still you. And what the Rocky Heron experience is no longer, it's a vinyasa based class set to this type of music that starts here and ends here. The Rocky Heron experience is me teaching a class and bringing to the table the things that interest me genuinely that day, whether it's a more vinyasa style class or skills and drill style class, or more like kind of postural work, or even if it's not an asana practice, if it's more pranayama meditation. So we're by asking those types of questions and by kind of scrutinizing a little bit the choices that you do make as a teacher, hopefully it can empower you further to recognize that what you're doing is a choice, and it's not just the only way that you can do it.
What's the coolest thing about like the end of a teacher training for you? Like when you see like people like in their minds, like how do you, I don't know, for me, I guess I would look back and be like, well, yeah, mine's exploded. Perfect. Job well done.
Mine's blown.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm motivated always to reference the Bhagavad Gita, which says that yoga is skillfulness in action.
To show someone the truth of the universe and scare the shit out of them.
Yeah. Is that what it says? I haven't read
Something
it in
like
a while.
that.
I think I would probably resonate, if you ask me today, I'd probably resonate most with that as a description of what yoga is to me. It's to be skillfully, sweetly, presently engaged in whatever it is that I'm doing. Sometimes that's strengthening my glutes. Sometimes that's brushing my teeth. Sometimes that's making love. Sometimes that's having a conversation with you on a podcast. Like, I endeavor to be skillful in the areas of, I don't want to say in all areas of my life, but for the most part, I endeavor to be skillful. And so when that area of my life is teaching a teacher training, then I want to be skillful in that. I want to assist, my students, my teacher trainees in meeting their goals. I want them to leave the training feeling empowered and excited and kind of invigorated around the prospect of what it is that they're doing. And I think, yoga teachers, the potential is so huge for us to facilitate not just well-being, but empowerment to our students. We live in a time where luxury has kind of replaced the necessity for us to move our bodies, in the sense like we continue to outsource our movements to different apps, and as we do that, we become more and more sedentary. And as movement teachers, we can help people in rehabilitating not just their movement, but also awakening different parts of their mind and their spirit. And I think that's really exciting. And I think that the more we understand what it is we're doing and why, the more that empowers us to make more innovative choices as teachers, to step outside the box a little bit of just kind of teaching the same thing in the same way every day, but to really get curious and playful and involved in the process of what it is that we do. So when I see my students leave a training feeling that zest again for their teaching, that to me is really satisfying. It means that I've done my job well, and I'm sure that the same is true for most teachers. When we're sitting alone at home in a room by ourselves, which I'm doing often, crying in the corner. No,
you guys, we just sit by ourselves.
No, but these what I've learned and what I have integrated into my practice and my understanding is it's well integrated into my body and into my movements. It's the yoga is in me.
Yeah, I mean, totally.
So it doesn't really, what makes it exciting is sharing it with other people. It doesn't matter how much I understand about, biomechanics or Warrior 2, unless I can make that come alive. And so watching it come alive for other people and seeing their questions get stoked and stimulated and hopefully, answered or deepened, that whole process is really rich for me. I continue to teach because I love to learn, and being able to engage in that process with other curious people like yourself makes, just makes it all come alive for me again. So I appreciate you for being, if anybody out there ever has the good fortune of being in a teacher training with Danni, whether as a teacher or a student, it's such a gift, because you're someone who's so, as experienced as you are, and as what am I trying to say? As much as you are looked up to as a teacher and a mentor and a contributor to all of this, when you're in the role of student, you are so engaged and so alive and so alert, and you really take such responsibility for your learning process, just the way you kind of organize your notes and ask questions and participate and like share your confusions when that comes up, and all of that is really exciting. And all of that, that whole process, it's a thrill to get to be a part of. So thank you for for sharing so much of yourself in the process of learning.
I mean, we're going to have what I like to call a love fest, but you know, like I wouldn't be that engaged if you and Noah and, you know, and even Peach weren't there delivering such amazing information. Like the way that you guys facilitated and the way that you created space to ask questions and to inquire and to go deeper and let us fall down these rabbit holes. Like that was the coolest part of all this. Like it wasn't just like, this is the way we do the thing and this is why we do the thing. There was so much more than I again, you know, and I've said this before, I think I did a video on it, but like I've never been in a learning environment like that where I've had that much permission to grow and play.
Cool.
So thank you, Rocky.
Of course. Yeah. Well,
thank me. Thank me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, no, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for thanking me.
Thank you for thanking me. Thank you. Thank me.
You're welcome. Thank you for saying that. I didn't want to
Rocky, Go ahead.
Oh no, it's just like the much like the rabbit holes, the bits never end, and we don't need to subject your listeners to these never-ending spirals.
I do need to subject them though to my love for you, because I really do just, you know, I'm so glad to call you mentor and teacher and more importantly, like friend. And it's been such a great opportunity to learn from you and to grow from you and know everyone, you know, everyone on the team has just been so awesome. And I'm so excited to grow. And, you know, I'm doing my like official certification with you guys. Like I'm in.
I love it.
I'm like 100% in. You can't get rid of me.
Damn it. Okay, we'll make it work. No, I mean, likewise, Danny. I appreciate. I'm trying to like even remember when I first met you and like how our relationship has evolved, because it does feel like you check all those boxes as well as like someone that I also learned from. I'm incredibly inspired by, you know, what it is you're doing with your business and with your life and with your teaching. Like I have so much to learn from you. And, you know, without getting into too much personal stuff, like you've also been a tremendous friend to me this last year, which has been, you know, a whopper of a year for me. I think, you know, and I say that in that, like, I'm pretty sure our relationship started out as friends and then kind of ventured into a more teacher-student and student-teacher relationship. So it's not often that I can navigate all those different dynamics with one person. And I appreciate that we can have such a complex, not that it's complex, but such a diverse and dynamic relationship with each other. So thank you for being you, and thank you for, you know, thanks for continuing to want to hang out and play and learn together.
Do you love it? I'm paying to hang out with you. It's great.
I really love that. that's like ideal.
Rocky, thanks again for coming on the show today. Really, I adore you. I love you. And thank you for.
Oh, we've been recording this whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. I thought this was all just the warm up.
Yeah, that's totally. We're subjecting them to 3 hours of us.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, right. Until the next Yogi Misfit session, this is Danny and Rocky saying peace out.
Peace out, y'all. Thanks, Danny.